You don't remember?
Remember what?
You really don't remember.
I don't know what more you want me to remember.
You said when you were first approached by Plan B, by Dee Dee Gardner and Jeremy Kleiner about adapting this novel, you said, quote, "I was not interested in making a fiction film. I teach, I'm good, I'm really happy." This might sound strange. Did part of you think you weren't making a narrative film, that there was a documentary aspect to how you were seeing this world and making this film?
Well, I mean, I think I use the fiction and documentary language as it serves people's understanding of where the things should settle or how they should approach understanding the material. But I would love to make art that has something that's coming from deeply in my core and not making things for the sake of making things. And I think one thing that was important to Jocelyn and I in the writing process was looking at what Coulson had done, going to the source of what Coulson was inspired by, and then allowing those materials to produce the means through which we express the film, as opposed to sort of imposing some sort of structure onto it. We wanted to let our process emerge from the materials themselves.
So what was your approach in creating something new from something old and making it your own?
In creating the architecture and looking at that book, which was so perfect in its economy, like how would we create? RaMell came up with this premise of shooting this in what he calls a sentient camera, what we refer to in the script as point of view, but which is in fact a little bit more expanded, and trying to find a way to create an emotional coherence through the script. That transference created a kind of architecture for how we thought about the cinematic grammar was not separate from that. That cinematic grammar was totally and thoroughly entwined with the story.
At what point did you find out you were also going to be carrying a camera when you were acting?
It says it in the script that, it's POV, during these scenes for these lines and everything, and I kind of just ignored it. I was more focused on connecting with the story and connecting with Elwood. It didn't really become real until showed up to set on that first day. They put a rig on me, and I had I had the camera on my chest, and we were taking shots of my hands. RaMell was very fearless throughout this whole process, and still showed that he had a lot of trust in us throughout the process. So it was just about committing and diving into it. So yeah, it was honestly mostly just exciting.
There are a number of scenes where there's not a lot of dialogue. There might be you might have to go from point A to point B, but you're observing each other and kind of being in each other's moment at the same time. I want to just ask both of you what that was like as actors. I assume RaMell gave you some freedom to figure out where you would go, how you would look at each other in those moments where there's not specific dialogue that you're having to perform.
Yeah, we definitely had freedom and space to explore. Prior to having to look down the lens, there was some conversation. I remember, I think, just very little of make sure you do kind of look at the lens sometimes during this thing, because we need to be able to switch back to your eyes. That's the only time we can get it. It still came from that very natural place of just being with another person.
I'm going to ask you about the scene that you're cutting where the first time that Elwood meets Turner, because there's a point of view, and then we kind of go away, and then we come back in time a little bit. Can you walk me through how that scene came together, how much of it was planned, and how much of it was found in editorial?
It was a fascinating one, because you knew from shooting it that first time we go to a brand new shot from a new character's POV was going to be something, and how do we support it with the choices leading up to it and after. Any attempt to smooth it didn't work, because you were clouding the things that were really helpful when watching it by trying to bury it at all. One of the things that I think it's doing is really drawing your attention to the differences between the two performances and the two moments as remembered potentially, or as re-recorded or reenacted or written in a novel and then adapted. There's all these layers going on, which I think are then brought even more tightly into focus by jumping ahead into this time-lapse boxcar footage, which is a brand new image capture format in the middle of this. So that plus the music is doing a huge amount there. Not until every one of those pieces was working elsewhere did that one work, I think. And it was probably one of the last things big things that we were like, let's do it twice.
Jomo, I want to ask you a practical question. That is, in a narrative film, you often enter a day with a shot list. You know what your setups are going to be, what your plans for coverage, your lighting packages, and so on. This is a movie that feels observed rather than designed, and the light oftentimes is natural. So how do you get the shots you think you need and still leave yourself, your actor, and your director open to shots that may not be planned, that are happy accidents?
It's an interesting process about this film, particularly because really from the onset, RaMell was saying he wanted to capture what he called adjacent images, images that don't have to do with plot or narrative, but capture something ineffable, something real about a life, and something that pulls you into the psyche of these characters. So towards that, it's almost as if it's like, oh, okay, then we should like have a general strategy and kind of just feel it out on the day. But in reality, it was funny that it kind of turned into the total opposite, where in prep, RaMell and I alone sat and spoke for easily 70 or 80 hours, literally about, okay, well, we're doing point of view, what we kind of called a centric perspective, an image that is always connected to a very real body inside of the scene, and then kind of saying, okay, what's an establishing shot in this grammar? What's a cut? What's a transition? And through that, we ended up having a 34-page single-space shot list going through every single shot in the movie, where every scene was designed as a oneer. We knew we were going to cut, but we wanted to design every scene essentially as a one take, because we knew that the camera apparatus was going to bring some sort of artifice to it for the actors, and we wanted to avoid having lights or stands on set so the actors kind of could be able to move freely in the space. But it was an interesting thing where for us to have a more maybe improvisational approach, it forced us to be incredibly meticulously planned.
Alex, Jomo's talking about the beauty of this story, and it's obviously about horrific things, but there's a lyricism to the way it's shot, the way it is constructed. How did you take a cue from that design in terms of what you are offering musically? How did it influence your choices? Were you working within that or somewhat against it as you're thinking about your cues?
Yeah, we're working against that because we wanted to make music that can stretch it and can go against it or go with it. And I think it didn't need to make sense in a typical reality sense. We were able to kind of lean more on your inner reality, how you might see the world or feel the world, and try to lead from that place rather than how it would look or sound in a normal movie or in a normal like wide shot. I think that freedom enabled us to conjure some like really unusual musical choices that somehow sparked a picture and we all felt really excited about.
Alex, Nicholas, Jomo, Joslyn, Brandon, Ethan, RaMell, thank you not only for making your film, sharing it with us, and coming to talk about it. Thank you very much, and thank you all for showing up. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
A great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.